Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Matt and Matt O Scale Train podcast. This is going to be episode 4. Matt, how you doing this evening?
Oh, pretty good. How about yourself?
I am doing well. My name is Matt Rochford. I am one of your hosts, and with me is
Matt Suzuha.
All right, Matt. So today we're going to actually have a continuation of our last podcast in episode 3, which was getting started in the O-scale hobby. And what we're going to talk about today is a continuation of that and how to get a little farther. How do I get into command control? How do I get into more intermediate and advanced, um, techniques or strategies or, things that I could add, to my layout. And we want to kind of start out with, that you just kind of graduated from episode 3. You went out and you bought a Lion Chief set. You got it all laid out. It's either on the carpet or on a table if you made a train table, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, okay, this is really great, but I feel like I want to expand. I want to spend a little bit more money. I want to get some more trains. What do I do? What's the plan? So the first thing I think that we should probably just kind of touch base on really quickly is command control. And for the folks that just don't know what command control is. So for the longest time, model railroading has been just based on a simple transformer and using a throttle to put voltage on the track, right? So the more the voltage, the faster the train goes, and hey, you know what? A lot of guys still like to run it that way. There are a lot of post-war guys who they don't want command control. I just want to put my trains on the track. When I add power, the train moves. When I reduce power, the train stops, right? That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But if you want to go into, if you want to get into command control, it's just to me, it was like a next level step. I just absolutely love it. And we'll go over some of the positives and stuff to command control as well. But basically what command control is basically it's an electronic control system for running your trains. And what we mean by that is, with the post-war stuff and the non-command control kind of technique, again, your train's on the track, you add power, train moves, you'd reduce power, voltage, the train stops. Well, in command control, there is always power on the track, right? So there's 18 volts, between 15 and 18 volts on the track all of the time, but the trains don't move because the trains all have an address, an ID in the command control, whatever command control you're using. And you address that train and you use a throttle or you use an app or you use like a remote control sort of thing. And you address the engine and then you use a series of buttons, soft keys, knobs, whatever, twist things to control the train and make it move. So what are the benefits here? Well, I mean, number one, you can run multiple trains together on the same layout without having to create all these really difficult blocks. And, blocks will be, that would be a whole episode, but because if you're running multiple trains on a non-command control system, you have to set up power blocks. So trains just don't run into each other, basically. So, but on command control, don't need that. You literally don't need to do anything special to your tracks. I mean, if you want to add additional power sections, that's perfectly fine. But when it comes to just the complexity, it is literally, so let's take, for example, Lionel system, TMCC, which came out in 1994, was Lionel's, command control. It still exists today. It is TMCC Part 2, maybe, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that's what it was originally called.
Yeah. And so it's called Legacy now, and that came out in 2007 to today. So it's that is Lionel's command control system. Now, Legacy is backwards compatible, so it works with your TMCC engines as well. And how it works, and it is when I say it's easy to set up, it is basically you take it out of the box, you plug in the remote to the wall to the power for the actual TMCC remote Legacy remote itself, and you attach one cable uh, from the Legacy remote um, to the neutral wire on your layout, to the outside rails, and that is literally it.
Couldn't get easier.
Um, it that's it. Because it works like a radio, so it uses a frequency and it talks to the trains because all of the trains, all TMCC Legacy trains, all have an antenna built in somewhere. It's different on different trains. Some are actually in the railing on the side, some are inside. Just depends on the type of engine it is and the body shape and stuff like that. So sometimes they have to hide them in different places. But there's an antenna, and you basically program the train. Now there is you do have to uh, there's a switch on the train to program it. So you put it in the program mode. You use your Team CC remote and say, I'm going to make this ID number 10. And then you hit setup. It tells that train your ID 10, and you respond to ID 10 requests. You put the train back in run mode, and now whenever you address ID 10, the train does what you want. You blow the throttle. I'm sorry, you blow the throttle. You can blow the throttle if
Hey,
you
you
want.
can.
uh, if you turn the throttle, it goes faster. If you hit the brake button, it brakes. If you blow the whistle/horn, it does that. Turns on the bell. You can do all your crew talk sounds. Um, and you are basically just controlling that train with a remote in your hand. You don't have to worry about any kind of power issues at all. There's no power throttle to move up and down. There's always power on the track at all times, and the power, the power that you have in your hand, it allows you to do so many things that you couldn't do with your standard locomotives. um and basically the teams I'm sorry MTH has the same thing with their DCS system. And maybe if you want to talk about DCS, Matt.
Sure. So for DCS, it's like Matt said, it's basically MTH's version of Legacy to some extent. However, with MTH, you get a couple extra bonuses. The first of which is that with MTH, it actually communicates in both directions. So you got bidirectional communication, and what that means is that you use the remote or the phone app, whatever you use, you send a command, and the engine responds back to the phone or the remote with the command. So if you give it a engine sound command on the phone or the remote, you'll see engine sound playing, or you give it the passenger announcement effects, it'll show that, and so you can really interact with the train that way. There's also a couple other extra things that are only in MTH engines, like the hours and the miles, which that's another great thing about the bidirectional communication is that you can do that. However, with DCS, you get, like I said, it's almost like MTH's version of Legacy. So, you use the click wheel to run the train, blow the horn, ring the bell, do the announcements or whatever you like. And there's some other cool things that are in DCS. You got some other, weird things, kind of like the Protocast. I'm not sure if you ever use that, but you can hook up an iPod or a phone or whatever to it, and you actually play music through the train, which is it's a little gimmicky, but it's kind of cool. And after that, DCS though, however, one thing with it, it is a little bit trickier to set up. And basically, what you do, and it's covered really well in both the instruction book, and also there's a separate book called the DCS Companion, which is written by the late Barry Broskowitz. And in that book, he shows literally every last thing you want to know about DCS, everything it does, and then some. He's also got one on the Wi Fi unit if you have just the Wi Fi unit. But what you basically do with the TIU, which is MTH's version of the legacy base, is you put the TIU between the transformer and the track. So if you had just a standard transformer and track setup, you had your two wires, your hot and your common that go to the track. What you would do is you would take those hot and common wires that go to the transformer, and you'd put those on the fixed one if you got one track, fixed one on the output side. And then you would take a completely different set of wires that would go from the input side of the transformer to the uh, input side of the TIU to the transformer, and that would be your main power. You connect the transformer to the track with the TIU in the middle, you basically just run your train. So, like I said, in the book from Barry or the DCS instruction book, they all show you how to add the engine, and it's just like running Legacy. Basically, you address the engine that you want and you run it. You do all the features you want. And what's really pretty cool is that Lionel has a system too, but for MTH, they have a extra device called an accessory interface unit. And with that, you can run switches and accessories off the DCS remote too. And what's nice is that with this, it's all in one box. You buy one box for the TIU, which also does conventional as well. So, like Matt and I were talking with the conventional way, is you increase the throttle, the train moves faster; decrease it, train moves slower. Well, with DCS, you can grab the variable channel on the TIU, and you can run that same feature, throttle up, throttle down with the remote. So you don't have to use the handle on the transformer anymore. The remote becomes your handle. And Lionel has a similar thing to this as well. It's a separate box that you have to buy though, which that's what's nice about MTH. It's two boxes, and then if you want the Wi-Fi, that's a third box, and you're done.
Yep. So, both just very good systems. You know, it, for us to recommend one over the other, let's keep in mind that we did have a episode where we talked about, team MTH closing their doors. As far as I know, DCS will still be around. There is a team dedicated to still doing updates for the DCS and everything like that. But just one thing to keep in mind is, unless something happens and somebody takes over MTH, we're not going to see any new engines that have DCS in them.
Yep.
So I wanted to just kind of point out one little cool little fact about TMCC and how it was created. So it was basically, its development was like backed financially by Neil Young. Yes, the rock and roll Neil Young. And the reason for that is, number one, Neil Young is a huge model railroad guy. Number two is that his son was disabled, and I don't know the extent of it, but one of the driving factors for Neil Young was, I want to be able to let my son have fun with trains too. I want to be able to give him something like a remote so he can run his trains around. And that was one of the drivers for him, is that, he wanted to create a command control system because his son couldn't do it the other way. He couldn't use the throttle system, the old, throttle, move it up and down. He wanted to be able to make something easy for him to use. And that's just a really cool story. Like he basically, wanted to, create something so it was easier for people to use and to enjoy model railroading. So,
Cool.
all right. So, let's go ahead and look into some of the maybe some factors that might, I don't want to say be a problem, but maybe some roadblocks that folks would run into if they want to basically use their Lion Chief set on a command controlled layout. So the one good thing here is that the basics are already there. To run a Lion Chief set, you're basically doing the same exact thing that you would do on a TMCC Legacy uh, layout. There's always power to the track, right? So if you have your Lion Chief set up, you put the train on the track, you power up the track. There's 18 volts on the track, and that's the same concept of running it on DCS or TMCC or Legacy layout as well. So they can run together just fine. They're buddies. They can work together. However, there is a couple of pitfalls in that you can't use at this particular time. You cannot use the legacy remote to control Lion Chief engines. So you're basically, when you get a Lion Chief set, you have two ways to control it, basically. Well, two command control ways. You either have to use the remote that it came with, or you have to use the Bluetooth app on your phone. And that's basically it. If there's, if you want to run them both, you kind of have to juggle your legacy remote with your Line Chief remote, and that's if you have multiple people running trains, that actually works out even better. But if you're just kind of an individual and you want to do that, that might kind of be something that might be a hurdle to get over, or just more, maybe a learning experience. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, for me, I have the Promontory Summit set. It's a fantastic set, and my one issue with it is the same issue I've had with every single Lion Chief set ever, is that you cannot run it with the legacy remote. Yes, there's been third-party individuals that have done ways to make boards and this and that to run it, but Lionel does not have a way to, you know, correctly run a Lion Chief set off the legacy remote. The new Lion Chief Plus 2.0 engines, which are a completely different thing, those can run on legacy slash TMCC and with all the other ways, Bluetooth and the universal remote as well. But for the Lion Chief only, the starter sets, those cannot. You have to use the Bluetooth app, as Matt said, or the remote that comes with it, or the universal remote. But for right now, there is no way to run a Lion Chief set off the legacy remote. I really hope that it comes soon because there is a lot of fantastic Lion Chief sets that we talked about in the previous episode that I'm dying to get my hands on. It's just for the fact that I want to run them off legacy. That's my sole criticism of it, and I really hope it changes soon.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that, Matt. I was really hoping that Lionel would look at how MTH handled that setup and just followed the suit and said, you know what? So legacy engines are going to be legacy, and everything else we're just going to put TMCC in. And I was just hoping that they would do that, because I think that's just a way better. I think it's just an easier way to get people into your kind of ecosystem, right?
Sure.
Because, like, if you want to create an ecosystem for any kind of hobby, I mean, you don't want to have like 12 different ways to run something, right? Because it's just then it's not really an ecosystem anymore. Things aren't compatible with each other, and now I'm trying to, like, trying to make things work. And I mean, there are some benefits to having the remote, like I said, and that, if you're a family and you have multiple kids, hey, that's great. Well, I mean, obviously, you want to make sure that the trains are not in the same loop, so not crashing into each other. You're not sharing the remote. But child A can have his train and run his train on one of the tracks. Child two can have her train and run it on one of the tracks, and they can both have their remote in their hands. And That's actually a positive thing. But again, if you you know if and I don't know how many times that situation is gonna come up for people, obviously. So if you're an individual and you have several line chief trains and several legacy trains, TMCC trains, and you kind of want them run them all together, well, you got to do like a juggling act at that point. So, again, this isn't that big of a deal. I mean, it's not. Sometimes a lot of people just like get their train on the track. They turn it to a certain speed and they just let it go. I'm not saying you have to hold all these things in your hand at the same time. That's not a requirement. Um, for me, I like to, I like some of my trains. I just like to turn on and let them go. Like my subways, I they're on a completely elevated track. I throttle them up. I turn on the auto mode for the subway stops, and I don't worry about it. I just watch it go around, and I start playing with another train. I mean, so that's obviously something that you don't have to babysit. Obviously, all these trains if you have multiple remotes. It's just more of a convenience factor if you can get them all into the same system. What are your thoughts, Matt?
No, I absolutely agree. And for someone like me that has the subways, I completely agree. I'll throw. I got the R32D train subway. It's fantastic. So I throw it on auto mode and I run something else on my other track because I can. I let the subway sometimes even shut the remote completely off if I'm not running another MTH, and if I grab a legacy engine or whatever or a conventional engine. But I do think though that one issue that I do have with Lionel, and that is that when Lion Chief first came out, Lionel was talking about doing a staircase, and I believe I talked about this in the last episode. But they were talking about doing a staircase method where you start with your Lion Chief set and you build all the way up to Legacy. Well, like we talked about a few minutes ago, you right now you got one rung of the staircase, but then you're missing about four others because you can't run that Lion Chief set with the Legacy remote. You're still stuck with Lion Chief only for that Lion Chief set, which is annoying. So, you know, while you still can run it, it's cumbersome and it still has been. And I don't know, like we said, if it's ever going to change. I would love it to, but who knows?
Yep. Yep. Now, if you're just kind of asking yourself, like, okay, so where should I start? What should I do first? Well, I think the best advice that at least I could give, at least from my perspective, and I'm going to get your thoughts on this too, Matt, um, is if you have any kind of tablet or phone that has, that you can run the Bluetooth app on, or you've have it already on the Bluetooth app, my recommendation is if you want to get into command control, is to pick up um, either a Lion Chief 2 Plus or a legacy engine, and find something that meets your budget, obviously. Because O gauge trains can be mighty expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So start low. Again, Lion Chief Plus 2.0 has TMCC now. There are also plenty of other there are legacy engines that you can get off of eBay, off of some of the other auction sites that maybe deal with trains from like a O gauge forum. So excuse me, in the O gauge forums, there is there's a forum topic just for selling your trains, and there's a lot I've bought and sold in that forum, and have never had an issue in there. Everyone I've ever dealt with has been fantastic, and I like dealing with all those. I'd rather sell my stuff in there than on eBay
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
because
I
obviously
agree.
there's no cut to eBay or PayPal. Obviously,
Oh,
you're
no.
you're taking it all, and you're just paying for shipping. Okay, so again, find something, a used Team CC engine. There's some used Team CC stuff out there that from, well, again, that's let me kind of back up a little bit. That that is going to require you buying a Team CC or Legacy set. Where I was going with the Bluetooth is that if you bought a Lion Chief set, you already have it's already basically good to go. You if you have track and you have the power to it, you literally don't have to buy anything else. You can go out and buy and then make sure it's a Bluetooth enabled uh Teams Line Chief Plus 2.0 or Legacy engine, and it'll say on the box and it should say in the details if it has Bluetooth. You can take that engine home, you can take it out of the box, put it on the track just like your Line Chief set, and open up your the Bluetooth app, and you'll be able to run that train just like you would with the you know with the Bluetooth app on your legacy with your Line Chief set. Except you probably have access to even more features on it.
Yeah, you do.
Um, yeah, so that's a good way to kind of without having to like buy the legacy set, right? Um, because there that's an additional cost. Like I think a legacy set is around $300 somewhere around there for a legacy set, and that might maybe you're not you know maybe a legacy or some of the higher end stuff is just too much. You just I don't want to spend so much money, or that's just not something I want to do. But this is kind of a way to get you in the door without having to just buy all this stuff. Because, like I said, if you bought a legacy set, I'm sorry, if you bought a Lion Chief set that came with everything, you're basically good to go. You can run if it meets the curves as well. I want to make sure that that whatever you buy, check the radius, make sure it's can go around 036 curves. All the Lion Chief plus 2.0 stuff will be able to go on 036 because they're made for smaller layouts. But if you do want to like spend a little money and go legacy, just double check or check with whoever you're going to buy it from. Call the shop, call go call the online shop, just verify with them, hey, will this make it around north or 36 curves? That's just a good way to kind of get your foot in the door without having to spend a lot of money. The other way, just really quick, and I'll pass it to you, Matt, is to basically go out and buy the legacy set. You can, as far as I know, depending on, you're also unfortunately going to have to purchase some type of power supply as well, because I don't believe that the power units that come into with the Line Chief sets can be used with the legacy system.
No,
Um,
they're DC supplies. You can't run
okay,
legacy with DC.
okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
You'll
So,
blow it.
yep, literally.
Yeah, literally.
So, like Matt said, you're not going to be able to use the Lion Chief set with the legacy base. So now you're looking at buying a legacy set, buying a power supply. Like, I mean, if you have like an 80 sitting around, it's just one of the older Lionel throttles that will actually that I mean, I started on that with my legacy set. I had one of those and it worked perfectly fine until I just needed more until I started having smoke units and lighted cars, and then I'm like, I need more power. But again, I mean, you're putting now your legacy set for $300, power supply $100. So now you're spending up close to around $400 just to get your foot in the door, and that's not even you haven't even purchased the engine yet.
Yeah.
So again, it really depends on your budget and how much you want to spend. So I'll hand it over to you, Matt, at this point.
All right. No, absolutely. And just to kind of reiterate a couple of things that Matt said, like for legacy, you can start small. You can buy a Bluetooth legacy or a 2.0 engine, whatever you want, and you can run it. If you want to just use Bluetooth for a while until you save up for that legacy set, great. Or if you want to, like he said, go all in and do legacy and an engine at the same time, you can. Just be prepared to spend a few extra bucks. But it's really it's a fun time to do this. Matt and I, we both have legacy and DCS on our layouts, and we love them. It's really fun, especially when you get some of the older legacy or TMCC engines that have a little bit better sound sets in them. You really have something. Like if you wanted to go on eBay or whatever and search up some nice older, 2007, 8 legacy engines, they're fantastic. That's what a lot of my collection is, and I love it. It's great stuff.
Yeah, when I got into So how I got into Legacy is that I did have I had some track. I had bought I had the one of my first Legacy sets. I had one that the Amtrak HHP-8
Oh, nice.
with the three cars, and it actually came with 048 curves because those long passenger cars needed 048 curves. That was I love that set. That's such a cool set, but um it was, it could be used conventionally. So again, conventionally is what we call, standard power up, power down, more voltage, train goes faster, less voltage, train stops, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but what was cool about it is that you can run it conventionally, and it had Team CC too. Now at that time I didn't have anything. I didn't have a legacy set, but that, I put my track together. I was running my HHP around, and I was like, you know what, this has Team CC. I'm like, maybe this is a good time just to kind of get into legacy. So I went down to my local hobby shop, and yeah, I bought a legacy set from them, and I went home, and I read the instructions, and it comes with everything you need, comes with all the cables, everything else, and it was just so simple to set up. And that HHP, I think, was my first legacy engine that I ever programmed into a remote, and it worked perfectly fine. And at that point, I had used that for a while, and I decided to um, start adding to my fleet at that point. I was very interested in, I'm from Chicago, so I'm a Metro guy and CTA guy, and MTH had Metro engines, so I was able to find one, and I brought that home. Now, keep in mind, Legacy can't control TCS, MTH trains. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and invest in DCS too. So I kind of got into both kind of early. Was really thinking like which way to go, but honestly, yeah, at this point, I think having both systems is just really the best of both worlds, because now you're not limited to a certain. I wasn't limited to a certain train. I was like, you know what? If I see a great MTH train, I'm buying that. If I see a great Lionel train, I can buy that, and I can run them both with the command control. Because I don't think I don't think we mentioned this earlier, but DCS and Legacy and Team CC can exist on the same layout
Yes, they
together at the
can.
same
I
time.
didn't mention that.
Yep, yep. They do not interfere with each other at all. And actually, DCS with a special cable, you can actually run Team CC and Legacy trains from your DCS remote or from the DCS Wi-Fi app. I haven't done it just because I like to control each with their own, with their own system. But it is possible, and people do it, and people love it.
Yeah, I have. I got the cable that does that, and I really bought it mainly for emergencies. Should I ever have to take my legacy in for service, I have a spare Team CC base, and I can hook that up in the rare event that my legacy has to go in for service. I can at least still run my legacy trains in some form or fashion with the MTH system. So that way I still have command control over them with just not all the features, but I've got most of them, which is the important thing.
How did you get into, like, how did you get into command control, Matt?
Well, for me, DCS, it's always been in my family. My dad, before he moved out, he was living with his parents, and they built this big, enormous layout that's at my grandparents' house, and they've always had DCS. They were DCS period until 2013, I think it was 2013, 2012. We went to a tour of layouts, and after that we were all blown away. My dad, my grandfather, especially my uncle, he buys pretty much everything he has. um, and we went to that couple layouts, and we saw Legacy for the first time. We all were just blown away, and that was also when Vision Line was brand new.
Oh,
So I mean, we were thunderstruck
Yeah.
AC/DC, yeah. But, no, we were absolutely blown away. So we got legacy engines. So for me, DCS, I've always known DCS. That's why I got DCS engines. But for legacy, when they got it, I was kind of jealous a little bit. So I got my legacy engines that I have. My first one, I'm a little upset that it took a nasty fall to the floor and was very badly damaged. So I don't have it anymore. But
Oh,
I'm gonna try to get another one. I got to add it on the form looking for one. So, but no, so legacy for me, it really came from looking at other people, really.
all right. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's just I'm really happy with I'm really happy with both systems, and I think it could be a little if it could be a little daunting to you know get into command control and I want to I'm starting small, I want to get bigger. Well, best way to do it again is just take steps. Don't like overflow yourself with just all kinds of projects and stuff. you know uh buy one or two engines. Make your track bigger, add another loop onto there. Start experimenting with them. If you're not on a table and you have room for a table, build a train table, get a train table. Makes things a whole lot easier. You can start learning to wire underneath. I had a table, but man, I had a table that wasn't even that I didn't. It was just a wooden. My layout right now, my table, it wasn't even decorated. It was literally just the wood. I had the tracks on the wood, and that was it.
Mm.
I mean, I had no trees. I had a couple of buildings. If you look, in fact, if you look at some of my earlier videos on my YouTube channel, you can see what my layout looked like. That the table that's in those early videos is the same table now, except I finally decided to uh, you know, grass it and start putting just uh, grass and trees and bushes and more lights underneath, running wires underneath and stuff like that. So, I mean, look, I mean, it took me 2 years of my table being up before I even started doing anything because, it's a learning experience. And, again, you don't have to like rush out and get a million things. Start slow, make it a learning process for yourself. And there's plenty of resources out there to help you. Again, O gauge forums. If you want to get into command control and you're running into a problem and you have questions, contact your local hobby shop. If not, go into the OGR forums. Everyone's super friendly in there. There's actually there's some Facebook groups too. I mean, I'm not a huge Facebook guy, to be honest with you, because it's it's got its problems. But the one thing where Facebook shines for me is all of the train groups that I'm in. There People post their trains, they post uh you know um decoration ideas. I mean, it's a good place to absorb a lot of data. But a lot of new people into trains ask questions on those Facebook groups. And there's a lot of great people in there. I try to help people as well. If they post a question like, hey, I'm new to O gauge, or I'm new to command control, what wire do I need to get to hook this up? How much power should I have? And again, take your time, have fun with it. There are resources out there, to help you move from the beginning, the starting beginners line chief, and move up to that command control, expert level stuff. What about you, Matt? Any closing thoughts here?
No, I absolutely agree with everything you said. You don't, it's not a race. You can take years to do it as far as command. Buy what you want. Like, if you want to buy legacy first, buy legacy first. If you want to buy MTH, buy MTH, whatever you want. Personally, what I would recommend, I would buy legacy first and then go to MTH afterwards. But you do whatever you want. You know what? The thing with railroading in any scale, it doesn't matter what scale you're in. We're obviously in O, but whatever scale you're in, there's no wrong answer. It's all your opinion. It's a lot opinion based. The trains you own, the scenery you do, the track you have, command, whatever it is, it's all your own railroad. You do what you want. You could have people that criticize it or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's your own layout. You do what you want. So, like I said, take it fast, take it slow, whatever you want. Just enjoy it. It's a ton of fun, and you definitely picked a great hobby to be in. I can definitely tell you that.
That's actually very well said, Matt. I think you were spot on when you said like it's your railroad. It you do what you want. You have fun with it. It is your place to go and chill out and um, be creative and make it what you want it to be. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. It really doesn't. It, you know, enjoy it. Even a train layout on the carpet is perfectly fine. Look, we're playing with toys here, right? So we all put our own imagination into them when we're running our trains, right? You know, even if it's on the carpet, it doesn't matter. You're running your railroad, right? And
Hmm.
that's what matters. Whatever, if it makes you happy, it's perfectly fine. You don't need 50 trains to be happy or to meet expectations. People can have a lot of people say less is more, right?
Hmm.
Less is more, and that fits a lot of things. I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm actually trying to kind of like not, I've kind of almost reached a peak here because I'm kind of running out of room. Um, but I'm just gonna enjoy the trains that I have, and if I see something I like, I'm gonna buy it. But I you were spot on there, Matt, with just saying like it's your layout, you do what you want, and there's people out there, resources out there to help you if you want. So
Absolutely.
um, yeah, well, I think that wraps it up. I think it was a really good episode. Again, folks, thanks for listening. If you have any questions, we really appreciate any kind of feedback. And we're even actually looking for people to maybe kind of make some requests on what you would like to hear on the Matt O Scale Train podcast. Matt, where can people reach you?
They can reach me on YouTube under Matt Train Lover 9943. They also have a Facebook page that's under the same name. So if you go to any one of my recent YouTube videos, you can just the link is in there, and you can check it out. Email me, whatever you want.
Awesome. And I can be found on YouTube at West Chicago Railroad. And I'm also on Facebook now under West Chicago Model Railroad. So you can find me in either place. And again, you know, if you can leave feedback, if you're listening to this on iOS, and if you could maybe leave some feedback for us, a rating, let us know how we're doing. Same thing with Google Podcasts. There's a way to leave feedback on all of the platforms. We would really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening, and have a good night.
Take care.